Good evening. Thank you for joining us in this virtual event for the launch of our YouTube channel. People are still joining in, so I'll take the first few minutes to tell you the story of how Cogito137 came into being. Last year, around this time, Nandana Goswami came up with the idea of a Scicomm magazine for our institute, and we quickly went and spoke to Professor Shubhajit Bandyopadhyay, who was the associate dean, who still is the associate dean of academic affairs at our institute. And Sir didn't need a sales pitch from us. He knew why this is important, and he was more than willing to extend his support. So, after a lot of initial preparation and also huge support from the Dean of International Relations and Outreach Office of IISER Kolkata, we launched our first issue in February this year. Most of you must be aware of the famous Latin phrase cogito ergo sum, I think, therefore I am. The cogito part, meaning I think, is taken from there. The Oxford Dictionary defines the word cogito as the principle establishing the existence of a being from the fact of its thinking or awareness. While the whole team of initiators agreed upon using this as the principal name, a few of them added special bits to the whole name in order to add uniqueness to it. So Manas Vishal, who was a part of the initiating team, suggested that we add a suffix of 137 to it. 137 is some sort of an unrecognized celebrity among numbers. Its reciprocal is almost exactly the numerical value of the fine structure constant, which is a composite physical constant that ties together varied physical theories of relativity, quantum mechanics, electromagnetism. In the Bohr model of the atom, one of the earliest quantum models, that is, the innermost electron of an atom with atomic number 137 would be moving just below the speed of light. Hence, a heavier element could not exist. If one divides the circumference of a circle in the famous golden ratio, then the smaller angle is approximately equal to 137 degrees. Its other properties include being a twin prime, an Eisenstein prime, a Stern prime, and a Pythagorean prime. Tanya Mondal, another member from the initiating team, came up with the interesting tagline, the thought capsule. In the famous novel 1984 by George Orwell, there were the thought police who prevented citizens from thinking against autocracy. The thought capsule will hopefully make people think and contribute to promoting science for wellness rather than dystopia. The logo in the form of a capsule was initially designed by Shushnato Karmakar, and he interestingly came up with the idea of using a font in the logo that had some uniqueness to it and could not be easily replicated or copied. The font used in the logo is Ray Roman, a font that was hand designed by the legendary filmmaker and visual artist Satyajit Ray. And the only copy of this font is available in Ray's handwritten manuscripts. Prajwal Padmanabha added final touches to the logo, including the red pill, blue pill reference from the 1999 film The Matrix. It is a pop culture reference representing a choice between red, which stands for the unpleasant truth, and blue, which stands for blissful ignorance. Now, I have been associated with Cogito137 since its inception. On that Saturday morning when Nandana gave me a call and pitched this idea. But my vision has always been to not let Cogito137 remain an in-house Scicomm magazine and to take it to a level where it can potentially have a national presence as a multilingual and multimedia Scicomm platform run by students of IISER Kolkata. With the launch of this YouTube channel alongside our website, where we put up our text-based content, we are well on that way. Do check out our October issue, which will be releasing on our website in another 5 days. The cover design is an original artwork by our designer Shreyash Borkar. It is a portrayal of the abstraction that we are witnessing, a raging pandemic, beckoning festivities, and mortals exhibiting omnipotence as the situation demands so. It is with deep pleasure and pride that I welcome you all to this launch event. Cogito137 is a science communication platform hosted by the Indian Institute of Science Education and Research, IISER Kolkata, a premier research institute in India. Cogito137 aims to contribute to the development of scientific temper and spread scientific awareness among the intelligentsia and the masses. We welcome content contributions in text, image, and now with the launch of our YouTube channel in video format as well, from anyone and everyone who is passionate about science and wants a platform to reach out to the masses. Our team is composed of extremely talented graduate and undergraduate students from IISER Kolkata and a few alumni. You'll meet some of them in the course of today's event. We have taken turns to introduce our esteemed guests of the evening. This evening, we have in store for you a series of short segments of people with certain expertise, experience, and command on different themes revolving around science and Scicomm. I stepped into the field of science communication about 3 years ago, and during this time I have attended various Scicomm workshops and conventions in the country, alongside taking up various small freelancing projects for various platforms. I am elated and mighty proud of our team to present before you this evening's speakers. We are extremely pleased that our esteemed director, Professor Sourav, will be speaking about the importance of science communication and the role of higher education institutions in the same for the inaugural segment. That will be followed by renowned scientists from India and abroad, Professor Soumitro Banerjee, Professor Dugatkin, Professor Shubha Tole, Dr. Bittu, Dr. Alexander Kalansky, speaking about certain science, society and Scicomm niches that they are associated with. Alongside scientists, we have a very special guest from the Science and Industry Interface, Dr. Kiran Mazumdar, founder and managing director of Biocon India Group, one of the most successful women of our country and a role model to millions. We also have some eminent personalities from the Scicomm scene of our country. Spurti has been my mentor since I began my journey in Scicomm. I have met Smita, Nandita, Janvi in the workshops that I have attended in the last few years, but never really gathered the courage to approach them in person, and it feels rather special to have interacted with them over the course of the preparation of this event. My acquaintance with Mr. Pallav Bagla has been more recent, and I'm extremely grateful to him for giving us his kind permission to feature his insightful discussion with Professor K. Rajaraman about Scicomm challenges in India as a part of this event. I believe I have spoken enough and taken up quite some of your time. Without further ado, let us begin.
Small platforms like ours have an important role to play in bridging the gap between science and society. For the inaugural segment of this event, we have a short message from the director of our institute, Professor Sourav, about the role of the in-house science communication platforms in the research institutes in enhancing the public engagement of the scientific community. Alongside being the director of IISER Kolkata, Professor Sourav is a distinguished theoretical chemist. Formerly, he has served as director of National Chemical Laboratories, Pune. Professor Pal's scientific contributions have been recognized with prestigious awards like the Shanti Swarup Bhatnagar Prize in year 2000 and the SA and STRA Sienna Rao Award in Chemistry and Material Sciences from CSIR in year 2014. He is an executive council member from the Federation of Asian Chemical Societies and a fellow of the National Academy of Sciences and the Indian Academy of Sciences. Professor Pal serves on the editorial boards of various international and national journals and is an active personality in the academic and scientific circles and is striving to create scientific awareness and bridge the gap between science and society.
So I am very happy that under the Cogito137, the science communication platform of IISER Kolkata is going to launch a YouTube channel. As I understand that this platform is already working very actively. It is currently launched in our website for last 1 year. The science communication, of course, is very, very important. Before I come to what the particular IISER Kolkata group has done, I should say that the science communication has a very important role in science education, particularly in the public institutions like ours, where we are getting government funds. It is our role and duty to explain to the public what we are doing. It has twofold advantage. One is that we can explain our science to others, and that is of course very important for the institute. But even more important is that while we interact with the public, we come to know what are expected out of us, not only by the government, but by the public, by the industry, and all stakeholders. So we are here to serve the public stakeholders. I think that is very important. And obviously our science has to be communicated, and that is the reason the science communication is extremely important in all research institutions. More so in the public institutions. But I would say in all research institutions, but certainly very important for institutions like ours. As you know, Indian Institute of Science, Education and Research was established in 2006 in Kolkata with an idea that we will do frontline cutting-edge research, which is interdisciplinary, and of course impart education to the undergraduate as well as PhD postgraduate level with a very good bend of research. And I think this is what IISERs have been trying to do. So it is truly a research university. In that sense, I think all IISERs, and of course including IISER Kolkata, have a responsibility that the science and the research that they are doing, how they are integrating that with the front-end education, it's our responsibility that we must communicate this to the public. I think with this fond role, this particular platform has been launched, and I am happy that this group has been doing very good work by writing a lot of articles on COVID virus, the effect of COVID, how to overcome the mental and physical problems in the current situation. A very special article that has been run is actually a pan-IISER women faculty role. Yeah. The women faculty is what they are working on. Their research has been nicely profiled pan-IISER. So it is not just in IISER Kolkata, but across the IISERs. I think that is very important because today it's very important to emphasize the role of women in science. And I think all of us know that the gender balance, gender neutrality is an extremely important part of scientific research. In fact, many countries have given much more importance than India, I must say, and we have to be very sensitive about this. The current situation, of course, because of the COVID-19, has in fact thrown a greater challenge for science communication, because many people, ordinary people, normal people who are all affected, they want to know what is this virus, how much it will spread, when it will go, is the vaccine coming, is the drug coming. I think that is where we have a very big role in the science education. If we are not able to communicate, then who will communicate? In fact, I would say today the society is looking to the scientific institutions for a solution. For once, the society is very honestly looking for a solution. And I think this is a great crisis where what we are doing, how we are doing, how we are going to overcome this challenge is something that has to be communicated. And I hope this particular channel that we are launching in YouTube is going to be successful in doing this. I am very happy to know that this group is now going to launch, the Science Communication Group here is going to launch the YouTube channel in 8 regional languages. And I think that is very important because the communication has to be done in many cases in regional language. And I think that's a very important part. However, when you do good science, you have to do it in English because you have to connect to the world. But having done that, we have to connect in regional languages to the ordinary people, to explain to them, get ideas from them, and then get back to the scientific community for a solution. And I think that is a very important part. I am very happy that this is being done. At the same time, when you do this science communication, it's also important to realize that we need to emphasize on how to do proper science. The science that should be done with the proper temper, with the proper mindset, which will not create misinformation. I think that is also one of the roles of the science communication channel. I wish this channel will be very successful, and this channel, because of the popularity in YouTube, will be able to spread the communication of science all across and will be seen not just within India but all across the world. I wish the group great success, and I hope this will create a new trend of science communication in this country. Thank you very much.
Science communication and popularization initiatives across the world are working towards a unified goal, a collective development of scientific temper in the society. However, it is evident that even all the Scicomm platforms put together are being stretched to achieve this humongous goal. A certain section of world leaders are still denying climate change, the evolutionary theory still needs to be defended, and we are seeing the rise of unscientific movements such as those led by flat earthers, anti vaxxers, and anti maskers in most recent times. In the following segment, Professor Soumitro Banerjee from IISER Kolkata will speak about the need for scientific temper and the development of an appreciation for science and the scientific method. Professor Banerjee is a faculty at the Department of Physical Sciences and the principal investigator of the Nonlinear Dynamics Lab at IISER Kolkata since 2009. Before this, Professor Banerjee served a long stint at the Indian Institute of Technology, Kharagpur. Professor Banerjee has served as associate editor for the IEEE Transactions on Circuits and Systems 2 from 2003 until 2005, and an associated editor for the IEEE Transactions on Circuits and Systems 1 between 2006 and 2007. He is a recipient of the prestigious Shanti Swarup Bhatnagar Prize in 2003 and was recognized as a highly cited author by Thomson Reuters from 2004 to 2014. He is a fellow of the Indian Academy of Sciences, the Indian National Academy of Engineering, the Indian National Science Academy, the World Academy of Sciences, and the IEEE. Apart from research, he takes special interest in the history of science and is also known for his scientific outreach efforts. He is associated with the Breakthrough Science Society, which envisions to propagate scientific thinking among the masses. He was also one of the active members in mobilizing the India chapter for the global March for Science.
The Cogito team has requested me to talk about the various shades of unscientific beliefs and thinking that are prevalent in our society in India, as well as all over the globe. The point essentially is, I don't need to enumerate the different types of unscientific thinking that starts from beliefs in various non-existing things to unscientific way of interpreting history and all that put together. There are people worldwide who believe that the earth is flat. There are people who refuse to wear the mask during the COVID times, and there are various kinds of beliefs and practices. But our focus today, I would like to focus on why do you have this? Even though the fact is that ever since the time of Renaissance and Enlightenment, there is a global movement to propagate the scientific way of thinking, but still after say 300 years of that time, we still have this kind of thinking prevalent. Why? The first thing that I could figure out was that through the whole educative process that we have in India, we hardly ever get an opportunity to learn how science teaches us to think. Science is not just a collection of subjects, it is a way of thinking. Now, that way of thinking is not propagated through our normal educative process. Science is taught as a collection of subjects: physics, chemistry, mathematics, geology, biology, and all that is sort of presented as a set of information. At no stage of the educative process do we come to know that science teaches us not to believe anything without evidence. And as a result, in their daily life, if they come across something that is a belief prevalent in the society without evidence, they tend to believe. Why do they believe? Because others believe. Now, this is a medieval kind of thinking. We were expected to get rid of it through the educative process. Didn't happen. Take, for example, the way we learn history. History is taught as a collection of things that happen. A sequence of things, the kings, queens, general, and fights, wars, sequence of events. And as far as I am concerned, when I studied history in my school days, I was never told how we came to know that these are true, that this really happened, that there was really a king called Ashoka, that there was some time when in the distant past there was the Indus Valley civilization, then there was a Vedic civilization. Why and how did we come to know that? We were only told that this happened. And we were never told how we came to know that that's really happened. As a result, if somebody presents one narrative against another, it is basically a person's personal choice as to which one to believe. And this is a major problem in our country right now. So I would rather pin down the problem to the way the education happens in this country. It's not really a scientific education, even though students study science. And those who have gone through that educative process and finally we are now in a sort of coveted position, I would say. Some are teaching, some are learning at the highest level, PhD and all. They have responsibility to undo and counter the wrongs in the way the present generation is learning. That means we have a responsibility in telling them what actually science entails. We have a responsibility in telling them how they should learn how to think. Now, this is something that we have to do, and unfortunately, this is a sort of a struggle that started quite some time back. I suppose you know, at some point of time there was an Indian Renaissance spearheaded by Ishwar Chandra Vidyasagar, whose 200th year we are observing now. And after he sort of forced the British, or he initiated a sort of teaching and learning of science, and he propagated a scientific way of thinking, rational way of thinking. Soon after him, we see a spark of doing science in India: Prafulla Chandra Ray, J.C. Bose, Meghnad Saha, Satyendra Bose, a plethora of scientists. And through them, we see that there was a constant struggle to establish science as against various kinds of belief systems. Unfortunately, after them, especially after independence, science for the scientific community has more or less become like a career, just a career. And because of that, the sort of struggle to establish a scientific way of thinking in the society, that has taken a back seat, and our own careeristic motives have taken a front seat, and that is one problem. So my appeal to the younger generation, upcoming generation, would be A, to take the message of science as a mission, to take it to the people, to the generation that is being educated now, to the students today, and to continue the struggle that Vidyasagar, Prafulla Chandra Ray, Meghnad Saha, and people like that initiated.
The primary onus of the endeavor we are discussing here lies on the scientific community. Research is a public-funded enterprise. Scientists and research scholars are thus expected to be front-runners in communicating science, ensuring public benefit from it, and educating the masses about why they should care about science. However, the real picture suggests otherwise. Scientific research generally tends to remain constrained within academic circles. But on a brighter note, there are some scientists who manage to break this barrier, and rather beautifully, by writing about their field of research in books and articles, through public lectures, and other avenues. Professor Dugatkin from the Department of Biology at the University of Louisville has been setting an example while making some strides in this direction. Professor Dugatkin is a behavioral ecologist and a historian of science. His research interest lies in the evolution of social behavior. Over the years, Professor Dugatkin has delivered talks about his research at more than 100 universities worldwide and is the author of 150 plus articles and numerous books on evolution and behavior. He is a frequent contributor to Scientific American, Psychology Today, and The New Scientist. Our next segment is a small excerpt from one of his talks that he has kindly granted us the permission to use as part of our launch event. This excerpt is an introduction to Professor Dugatkin's book, How to Tame a Fox and Build a Dog. The book is the story of the most astonishing breeding experiment ever conducted that attempted to recreate and witness the first ever domestication process in real time, wolves to dogs. The book has gained huge popularity due to its simplistic approach in explaining the science of an evolutionary process, which changed the course of human evolution and redefined the boundaries between animals and humans thousands of years ago.
Hi, I'm Dugatkin, and I just want to take a moment to introduce myself and to say that I'm thrilled to be part of the Cogito137 YouTube launch, and I thank Arnika and the whole team for inviting me to be part of this. In a moment, you will hear me talk about a 60-year-long ongoing experiment involving the domestication of silver foxes. I had the opportunity to visit Novosibirsk, Siberia, where this experiment is going on twice, once in the winter of 2012 and once in the winter of 2014. It was minus 40 degrees out, but beautiful. And I had a chance to interact with Ludmila, the entire team of researchers involved in the experiment, and the incredible domesticated foxes themselves. These trips were transformational for me, perhaps more important than any trips I've taken in my life. And as you listen to the talk, I think you will see why. Thanks and enjoy.
So I'm going to start with a question. Right? Suppose that you could build the perfect dog. What would be the key ingredients in your recipe? Well, you definitely want cute, right? Maybe something with floppy ears and a curly tail that wags in anticipation whenever you're around. You'd want smart, you'd want loyal, and you definitely want unconditional love. The thing is that you do not need to build this animal, because for the last 60 years, a dedicated team of Russian geneticists in Siberia have been building it for you. The perfect dog. Except, as you might guess from the title of today's talk, it's not a dog at all. It's a fox. A domesticated fox. They built this in the minus 40-degree winters of Siberia, but more importantly, they built it in the blink of an eye in terms of evolutionary time. 100th of the time that it took our ancestors to domesticate wolves into dogs. So I'm going to tell you about cutting-edge work on this process of domestication, which is not something only of interest to biologists. Because if you think about it, when our ancestors began domesticating plants and animals, we dramatically changed our own evolutionary history. We would be very, very different if we had not done that. And this experiment that we're going to talk about is the gold standard for understanding how domestication comes about. So I'm going to try and give you an overview of what they've been doing and why it's important. 60 years. The experiment starts with this fellow, Dmitry Belayev. And Belayev's hypothesis went like this. The one thing that our ancestors always needed in whatever species they were trying to domesticate was an animal that would not try and bite their heads off. And so he hypothesized that the earliest stages of all animal domestication events involved our ancestors choosing the calmest, tamest, friendliest towards human animals. He further hypothesized that somehow, and he really didn't know how, but somehow all of those other characteristics in the domestication syndrome, longer reproductive periods, juvenilized facial features, all of that was somehow genetically connected to choosing animals based on how friendly they were towards humans. So he decided he would test these ideas in foxes. And the experiment he envisioned was very basic at its core. He imagined testing hundreds of foxes and choosing the calmest ones, the ones that are most friendly towards humans, preferentially breeding them. Then when their pups grow up, test them. Preferentially choose the ones that are friendliest towards humans. Do this generation after generation after generation. Foxes breed once a year, so essentially 1 year equals 1 generation. He would do this every generation, and he would see, first of all, was he in fact getting inherently calmer, friendlier to human animals, and strictly choosing them based on how friendly they were, did he also begin to see the emergence of other traits in the domestication syndrome? Right? Did they start showing lower stress hormone levels or other characteristics of the domestication syndrome? This is my friend and colleague and co-author, Ludmila Trut. Ludmila recently turned 85 years old. And every day, including today, for the last 60 years, she has led what's come to be known as the silver fox domestication. And so what Ludmila would do every evening is that on the other side of this house, there's a little bench. And she would sit out there reading a book. And like you might with your dog, Pushinka would be lying by her side, and Ludmila would be reading and petting Pushinka. And every evening around 7 p.m. or so, there was a guard that would come around the fox farm just to make sure everything was okay. And they had hired a new guard that nobody knew. And this guard, on the night of July 15th, was approaching Ludmila and Pushinka in a sort of brisk way that maybe you might interpret as slightly aggressive. And Ludmila looked down at Pushinka and she could not believe what was happening. Pushinka had bolted up, charged towards the night watch person, and began barking at them exactly the way that a guard dog would, and exactly like no fox in the history of the experiment had ever barked. And Ludmila's first thought was, Pushinka's protecting me. But then she stopped and said, wait a minute. I know better than most how dangerous it is to fall into that trap, to think that animals are behaving the way we would in that situation. But then something else happened, which was that Ludmila went over to the watch person and began talking to them in a very calm, serene way. And when Pushinka saw that, she stopped barking, walked back over to the bench, lay down, and waited for Ludmila to come back and start reading. Is it possible Pushinka wasn't protecting Ludmila? Of course it's possible. But what Ludmila wanted to know was just how far down the path of domestication these animals had come, and Pushinka told her that. And the reproductive season of the elite domesticated animals was slightly longer, another trait in the domestication syndrome. In the early 80s, something remarkable happened. In about 84, a handful, maybe 4 or 5, of the elite domesticated foxes were ready to breed twice in a year. Not only in the typical January, February time, but a second time in September. Absolutely unheard of ever in foxes, but typical for domesticated animals. There are all these changes that have happened with domesticated foxes. Not only they're calmer, but all the morphological changes we talked about, the floppy ears, the curly tails, and so on. The first question was, at a molecular genetic level, are the genetic changes associated with that, are they kind of spread all over the genome of the foxes, or are they localized in sort of hotspots of genetic change associated with domestication? What they found was many, not all, but many of the changes in their domesticated foxes could be localized to one chromosome, Fox chromosome number 12. That's sort of interesting, right? It's not spread all over the genome. It's in a hotspot or in one of a couple of hotspots. More interesting was that at the same time they were asking that question, a group of people were asking the same exact question in dogs. So dogs have more chromosomes than foxes, but Fox chromosome number 12 is essentially spread across, bits of it are spread across 3 dog chromosomes. For anyone who's a biologist, these are homologous chromosomes. But basically, Fox chromosome 12 is divided up into bits of it onto 3 dog chromosomes. Lo and behold, one of those 3 dog chromosomes, again, is a hotspot for domestication, changes associated with domestication. So even deep down at the molecular genetic level, it looks like they're mimicking the process that happened with wolves to dogs.
There are times when scientists end up behaving in rather unscientific ways. Yes, I'm talking about the inclusivity challenges that are faced by various minorities pursuing STEM fields, ethnic groups, the LGBTQIA+ community, the specially able, to name a few. For our next segment, we have Bittu, aka Dr. Kaveri Rajaraman, an associate professor and head of the Department of Psychology in Ashoka University, New Delhi, who will speak about gender fluidity, the very concept of gender and its scientific understanding. Bittu received a PhD from Harvard University in Neurosciences and followed it up as the D.S. Kothari Postdoctoral Fellow at Center of Ecological Sciences in Indian Institute of Science. Bittu is a genderqueer transman who believes in the annihilation of caste, class, and gender. Alongside research, he is vocal about the rights of transgender and the queer communities in India and the inclusivity challenges that they face in academia, STEM fields, and other walks of life.
Hello everyone, my name is Bittu. I'm an Associate Professor of Biology and Psychology at Ashoka University, and it gives me great pleasure to send a short message about an aspect of science communication that the organizers have asked me to address, which is the question of gender fluidity, as they put it. For me, more fundamentally, perhaps the overall question of gender itself, because gender is a social construct that derives legitimacy from association with a biological category, sex. And there's a lot about biological sex and gender that that sort of information out there in the biology world, which is still not familiar to many biologists because it's not part of our curricula. It's not part of it's very limited part of some medical curricula, and even then quite limited. So maybe I'll sort of just do a quick introduction to some things that many of you would already know, and perhaps a few things that are somewhat surprising. And I'll end with this question of what it is that we need to look at as scientists when it comes to addressing questions of gender and sex with respect to, of course, humans, where the consequences of thinking of gender and sex as rigidly tied categories and biologizing gender, which is a social category, due to the link between medically determined biological sex and the social construct of gender. something that's particularly difficult or creates particular difficulties for people like myself who are transgender, and other folks who are intersex, but also for society more broadly, for everybody to be subjected to a whole code of social stereotypes and labor expectations that are tied to certain parts of their body, which in fact most human beings go to considerable lengths to cover up. Do we really want to pattern behavioral expectations into just two categories across people just based on a medical reading of their bodies? Maybe not. I'm hoping many of you know that there are multiple there are multiple steps of genetic regulation and the pathways that lay down genetic differentiation to produce these categories of biological sex, and multiple variations in these can lead to people being born intersex. Unfortunately, neither the medical establishment nor the biology establishment has really pushed from an understanding of these natural variations for intersex infants and intersex people to have the right to self-determine what happens to them. And unfortunately, to this day, medical corrections upon intersex infants are routinely performed, and the lack of an understanding of how sex does or does not beget gender often leads to not just physical but also gender-based social trauma for intersex children. Famous trans biologist Joan Roughgarden pointed out in her book Evolution's Rainbow that it's in fact not the presence of a penile structure or giving birth, which of course is female associated in mammals largely, but is not fundamentally definitional of maleness or femaleness in the animal world. A lot of people also don't know that there are some really fantastic examples in the animal world of animals that don't of course, you know that there are several organisms that are hermaphroditic, but there are also several organisms that change their gender over a lifetime. So many of you know that with some crocodilians and some fish and some frogs, that temperature can actually regulate the biological sex that organisms express, and that these can be epigenetically controlled and not genetically. Not just genetically, but there are some, Nemo the clownfish that you would have seen in the cartoon Finding Nemo is a type of fish that actually, where males can actually undergo a transformation during their lifespan. So immature males can actually become females if the females, other females in the group die off. I say all this just to give you a quick flavor of how much variety there is in the animal world and how our standard framework of what we think of as immutable biological sex stands on somewhat different grounds if one looks at the evidence across species than we think of as in our sort of immutable and very mammalian framework. We as trans folk also play an important kind of role in appending some of these ideas, because we're people, at least for me, I'm somebody whose brain's expectation, somatosensory expectation of my body is that of a sort of typically male patterned body. This is what I mean when I say I'm trans. There's very little understanding out there in the scientific community of what it means for people to say that we are trans. So for me, in the same way that you would have a sense of your arm extending from your body and you would have an expectation that that arm is there, and people who sometimes face amputations, feel the phantom limb even if it's not there. As V.S. Ramachandran has pointed out, this is also something that can be applied to thinking about transness, and several trans folks experience phantom body parts or feel that body parts exist despite a lack of a very disconcerting sort of lack of expectation of their existence. And this combination of traits can be quite sort of just sensorially distracting, sometimes really disconcerting. And then, of course, on top of that, if one has to deal with a society that expects that because one's body is a certain way, one has to then behave in certain ways, labor in certain ways, and sort of conform to a whole host of social expectations, and really any deviation from any of those norms is sort of severely socially punished and questioned and ridiculed. Then you have the additional social layer of dysphoria that one has to deal with as a trans person. So I will just say this, as biologists, all of us have a responsibility to really sort of inform ourselves of the literature on biological sex and its variations, to ensure that surgery on intersex children and the suppression of expression of trans identity among children and adults stops. And we also have, likewise, the responsibility to rethink what we think of as immutable about the connection between sex and gender. And really, I would posit that we're all people with different bodies, and we may even have a variety of brains, but we know that you can't simplistically look at a brain and decide whether it is male-typed or female-typed. Once the categories are laid down, one finds a lot of correlates, but we also know that brains are heavily shaped by experience, and so it's not until biologists are not going to get answers to a lot of questions until we really start looking at what a level social playing field for people across body types is. And I would really sort of encourage you to think about what it would mean to have a world in which one's body is one's body, and it has nothing to do with the social expectation or assignment of labor. People can make decisions about what they want to do with their bodies without being policed.
Science, by its very nature, is technical. The scientific community uses certain specific jargon when communicating amongst themselves. This, however, tends to make science somewhat restrictive in nature. When we consider the conveyance of science among the masses, the concepts become inconceivable and sometimes even too mind-boggling to comprehend. The art of science communication focuses on bridging the gap by innovating the methods and analogies used in the portrayal of science to make it more interesting and relatable for the non-specialist audience. Our next guest for this event is Dr. Alexander Kalansky, also known as Sasha, who takes special interest in interdisciplinary modules of popularizing science. Dr. Kagansky is the director of the Center for Genomic and Regenerative Medicine, School of Biomedicine at the Far Eastern Federal University in Vladivostok, Russia. His research is mainly aimed at understanding the molecular basis of cell fate in normal and disease conditions, drug discovery, and finding new ways to cure cancer and regenerate tissues, which will be very crucial for the future of molecular medicine. Apart from his research, Dr. Kagansky also regularly organizes public engagement of science activities for different target groups, such as artists, primary school kids, and the general public in different parts of the world, thereby opening up new avenues for collaborations between scientists and artists.
I think that it is natural that scientists collaborate with artists. For arts, it's a great source of inspiration, because the data, we have produced a lot of data, and here in this university in Far East in Vladivostok, they have started the course called Digital Arts. They can use artistic methods of interpretation for any data. Only sitting in the classroom or having graphs, going deeper, it's not. I think it's not. It's not enough. And to have to fill your heart with joy, you also need a party. For me, arts is more like a celebratory thing or a carnival. That you can celebrate science with friends who do not use algorithms or equations, to prove things. So I think that it is natural that scientists collaborate with artists. Yeah, I think because a lot of arts now is using computing in as a method of delivering the visual information or the sound information or even the sculpture. You know, the 3D printers that artists use, they have data, digital data in them, and then the digits you can get them from science. You know, you can to take the neural signal of one cell in one channel of, for example, a music program. You know, like the musicians, they also use programs that have these channels. You know, like Ableton, for example. Doesn't matter what you put them. If you put them neural signals, they will play neural signals, and then this will create. You nominate them different instruments, and then you can have an orchestra from neurons. Since my childhood, science and arts were not separate, you know, and I think they were artificially separated by adults. So I think by keeping an inner child, we can do anything we like, you know, just to keep having fun and be curious, you know, because sometimes science alone is not a lot of fun because we struggle to find one particular proof, and then, you know, if it doesn't work for years, you get quite frustrated. But arts allows you to look at things at a lighter angle where senses are more important than the logical and mathematical proof.
Now we move on to the other end of the spectrum, science and industry. We live in a world where all resources and knowledge have ways of reaching the public through tools of mass production and marketing. Dr. Kiran Mazumdar Shaw, the founder and managing director of India's leading biotechnology enterprise, Biocon India Group, utilized India's homegrown scientific talent to make breakthroughs in medical technology by placing it in the hands of the common man. Biocon and its subsidiaries are the pioneers in areas less frequented by Indian pharmaceutical companies, including fermentation-based small molecules, human insulin and insulin analogues, biosimilars for key antibody drugs, novel therapies, and high end contract research services. Dr. Mazumdar Shaw was refused jobs after approaching multiple breweries, even though she had required qualifications. The only reason cited was no one wants to hire a female brewer. But pharmaceuticals caught her interest, and she went on to set up Biocon, one of the pioneering biotechnology enterprises of our country. She is now India's only self made female billionaire. Dr. Majumdar Shaw has been honored with our country's highest civilian awards, the Padma Shri in 1989 and the Padma Bhushan in 2005. She made it thrice on the list of Forbes' most powerful women in the world. In 2014, she received the Othmar Gold Medal for outstanding contributions to the progress of science and chemistry. Most recently, she has been named the EY Entrepreneur of the World 2020.
Hi, I'm Kiran Mazumdar Shaw, and it is a pleasure for me to speak at this very unique forum called Cogito137. I have been asked to speak about avenues of science entrepreneurship. And let me start by saying that this is the most appropriate time to talk about the application of science in an entrepreneurial way. COVID has actually thrown a huge number of challenges to scientists across our country. And I'm really pleased to see how scientists have actually risen to the challenge by coming out with novel technologies for testing, novel discoveries of how the virus mutates, and of course, the whole opportunity that we have in coming out with new treatments and new vaccines. This is the first time I've seen in India how this new scientific energy has been unleashed thanks to COVID. And as they say, never lose a crisis for innovation. And this is what the opportunity is about. It is about coming up with new ideas that address these very, very new challenges. And it is about taking and shaping these ideas to the market. Many, many stories you've heard about from my labs and how they came up with the first indigenously developed RT-PCR test, to how companies have repurposed their garments businesses, their textiles businesses to come up with PPEs, new fabrics that are virus resistant, masks that are also now virus resistant. I also know how companies have come up with antiviral solutions in which you can transport the nasal swabs. There are companies that have come up with a plethora of new diagnostics, from RT-PCR to rapid antibody to rapid antigen to ELISA kits to LAMP-based kits, etc., etc. This has actually unleashed a very new potential that we never thought existed in our country. So I hope that this initiative and this platform will actually spur new ideas and new entrepreneurs that will actually take science to society. So all the best, and I do hope we can see many, many new innovative products and services and ideas coming from scientists in various laboratories across our country. Thank you.
I am a third year BSMS student and I am having trouble thinking outside the box when it comes to deciding a career. While some have a decisive intention of pursuing a PhD, I am not there yet. And I believe there are many others like me. Most students of science aim for teaching and leadership jobs in academia. while some, with a little more exposure to the world outside academia, are drawn towards industry. However, our next segment concerns something interesting, something outside the box, something indeed outside the box. A career in science communication, scientific management, something that helps completely utilize all the resources and opportunities that are available in our country. This segment is a conversation which Arunita Banerjee from our team had with Dr. Smita Jain, the Executive Director of India Bioscience. Here, they talk about various internships in the field of Scicomm and funding opportunities that Scicomm initiatives could approach. Dr. Jain did her doctoral studies at the Indian Institute of Science, Bangalore, in the field of cancer biology. After exploring industry for a couple of years, she moved into the field of scientific management. With her keen interest in management, ability to communicate, she played a key role in establishing the business and processes at Camp Bangalore. She also has the experience of working as a research analyst with a digital content organization. She is deeply motivated to take the activities of India Bioscience to all possible corners of the country.
My first question to you is that science communication initiatives like the one that we are running at present in our institute, these run completely on a voluntary effort. It's basically a bunch of students who have come together and they're doing this in their off time per se. Sometimes actually finding a little extra time as well, especially for it. However, there are other initiatives, other platforms which manage to pay their writers and kind of not just their writers, but they have a bunch of other people working, illustrators, publishing teams and everything, and it's like a job. So could you tell us about some funding opportunities which small science communication initiatives like could approach and kind of benefit from?
Okay, and that's a very valid question and a very, very important question because time has come. You would agree completely that such initiatives have to get going from even an institutional perspective. And what's important here is a big time support from the institution where they are being nurtured, plus support from the faculty members or the whole community of that institution. That's definitely one big support that one can look into.
That actually is one thing that we really have and
agree, but that's something I'm talking about. A change that has to come at the policy level, that institutions set aside some of their fundings. Though I also agree that under the current circumstances, funding is a big time issue. But if this whole thing has to take off really, really well, there has to be a support coming from institution for which a policy change is required. Having said that, from the institutions, I guess, when students community is involved, it as you said, it's more of a voluntary effort. But I really feel that if you want to grow it bigger, and take it to the next level, then the other thing students community can do is look for support from other funding organizations in India. Let's say India Alliance or DST has certain initiatives on science communication, or DBT. That might not be very easy, but one can look into some of the support coming from there.
So these fundings that you're talking about, are these especially for science communication initiatives?
Not exactly, if I would say science communication initiatives, but yes, say public engagement and outreach activities. And at times, what happens is if your proposal is really, really well written and worthy, there are times when, with some bit of tweaking, one can figure out if support can come from one such funding agency as well. That's also a possibility. But the most untapped area, I feel, is the private money that we have not tapped. And companies have got CSR funds. There are philanthropists. There are big time industrialists who, if they find value in what you are doing, they would be more than happy to fund it. It's just that we have never tapped into those pools or those funds. Because having said that, and I don't think an institutional Scicomm office would require a very huge chunk of money.
Not really.
The kind of money that you need to run your activities really well is something one can definitely, reach out to a private source. And
So we are not really the institution's Scicomm office. We more started like a student-run magazine thing, and we with a lot of support from the institute, we are specifically support in the form of permissions, I would say, that they are kind of really letting us grow and evolve into a thing bigger than a small institute magazine. But yes, a long way to go.
no, but I'm sure if an initiative like yours continues to deliver really good stuff, the institution management would also find that value. And
Right.
once you put across really well that what your plans are, what the impact is going to be, and how you plan to take it forward to the next level, uh, I really do not see a reason why you would not get support.
Exactly.
And some of the faculties also in the institutions at times have got their funds where some part of it can be used for outreach activities. So one can also
Right.
see if that kind of collaboration or partnership can be established.
So, moving on to the next thing. Now, we have a lot of students in our institute who are interested in developing their science communication skills. That is how we managed to kind of run this from within the institute, because we have all kinds of people. Like, some are really into writing, some kind of are really into illustrations and art. So if you could tell us about some internship opportunities, some platforms for which they can approach to, like in India especially, where they kind of can work with an editor. Say, like, because if I speak from a personal experience, that's how I have learned things. Like when I'm working with somebody, and over the last 3 years or so, I've tried a little bit of freelancing here and there. So I've worked with Spurti Raman at Research Matters. She's worked on most of my pieces. Sometimes it's been Aarti Halbe. Then for India Bioscience, I did a piece. I worked with Shreya. And it's really helped me grow, and also not just internships but workshops, which I actually had the opportunity of even attending workshops by India Bioscience. Like, there was this one in collaboration with the British Council. So some opportunities like these, which students can look out for skill development, basically in this direction.
Exactly. So I guess that's another very valid point, Runita, that you have touched upon. And as you would know, there's like no glory in practice. But without practice, also there is no glory, right?
Exactly.
So one thing is that one has to just practice writing at their own end. Keep practicing, keep writing, even if you keep deleting it, but one has to keep writing on various different things of interest. Maintain your blogs and share with your peers, with your friends, with your colleagues, mentors. And it's also good, as you said, it's also good to have mentors who can help you grow, who can help hone your writing skills. So, and with whom you can talk in a formal or an informal setting. So those I guess my first advice would be that continue practicing, maintain your blog, and have people or mentors who can help you grow. Having said that, India Bioscience also maintains a discussion forum on science communication, and that's a big forum that Shreya, who runs the science communication vertical at India Bioscience, is maintaining and has grown. So there are a lot of people, mentors, uh, resources that are there on that forum. So students who are interested can join that forum. I can share the link, learn a lot from each other. And I feel I'm sure there would be other forums as well. Twitter is definitely one where there are a lot of communicators and there's active discussion that goes on, but a little more formal forum where people can put forth their ideas, put forth their questions, and then talk and get feedback, suggestions. would be very, very helpful in order to grow. Then there are a couple of workshops. I know the Welcome DBT India Alliance does the science communication workshops at different institutions, and I'm sure they are also now would move it to an online version soon. That's one. I know DST has this IISER program.
Actually, the call for IISER is open right now, so it's kind
Yes.
of good that you mention it. We'll put the link also in the description of the video. So it's more like you write a story about one of your published works, and
Yeah, but that's when you really weigh where your writing skills are, because writing a published work, a piece of research work versus a more generic general audience is very different. That's when you start figuring out what needs to go out, what doesn't need to go out, what words to use, how to avoid jargons, and lots of things. It's really, really important that one participates in any such program that's available. Then I know Euraxis runs a Science Slam program, European organization, but they have this Science Slam that runs in India as well. So that's another way to participate and hone the skill further. Then obviously there are organizations like, let's say, India Bioscience or Confluence or Research Matters or Life of Science, Longer Bay. And these are organizations, programs who can be approached in order to figure out if you can write for them and work with their editors, who are all wonderful set of people. So you work with them and then grow further. Also, sometimes I feel in the initial stages, there's no harm that the kind of work, let's say, this specific vertical of research that you are really, really passionate about. Follow the work of researchers who are in that field, voluntary basis. Just ask them that if they are willing to, share their work so that the students can in turn write. If approached in a proper manner, in a professional manner, any researcher would agree to share the work that's published, and that's something that they themselves were thinking to take it out to the public. So that's another way. And then put it up on your blog and use the social media to publicize it. One more thing, Arunita, if I can add here, in terms of how to grow your writing skills. This is more of an academic setting that I've been talking about. But if someone's also interested to grow in a little different angle in terms of industry Scicomm,
yes,
that's also another place, and that's something I myself now learning, that how big that vertical is. There are lots of industries who are either into Scicomm or publishing, and that's growing in India as well. There are pharma companies who have dedicated communication vertical, and they also look for people who can help communicate various different things in various different ways. So that's another place one can look into.
So this finally brings me to the last question. That is, we kind of are rather a small bunch of amateurs, I would say, who are enthusiastic about science communication and are uh, trying their best to kind of contribute to whatever little level extent we can. Now, I'm asking this especially to you because you're executive director of India Bioscience, and you are kind of managing this scientific outreach platform. So, some words of advice for us, like from your experience, and yeah.
That's an interesting question, but a difficult one. So, I guess I've been around at India Bioscience for a little more than 4.5 years now, and seen it grow. Mm, But the foundation was already laid before even I came in. But my piece of advice is that if your focus is there, if you're clear what you want to do and how you want to do, that's also very, very important. Taking even baby steps help. It's not important to just grow overnight. It's not needed, because sustaining that overnight growth becomes difficult. What's really, really important is that you have your vision that this is what you want to do. This is where you want your effort or the program or the organization to reach in this time period, and then work towards it. And I have seen that if you are clear, things do fall in place. You make efforts to reach that goal, it happens. It's not a magic. You have to really work towards it, but it happens. So same at India Bioscience, we have very slowly added a lot of new things. Like the skill building vertical was not a huge vertical at India Bioscience. We were mostly into networking, mentoring of young investigators. But last few years, we started putting our efforts towards skill building, towards outreach activities, and we have grown. We have really grown, and the support that we have got from the community, from the participants, was very, very motivating, and we've added things one after another to that. And it's not that every time we were perfect. We have also made our own set of mistakes, but we have learned from it, and we have
Happens. Right?
yes. So you don't look back, but you continue looking ahead and then grow. So very recently we have started our outreach efforts. The response was really, really good. Like we asked for applications from across the community in order from the research community to do any bit of outreach activity that they want to do, and we got really good response from across the country. 5 awardees have been selected, and they are going to do their work for next 1 year. And we are also hopeful now that the foundation has been laid. We want to take it to the next level and grow it.
Just a follow up to what you've been saying, when an initiative is taking baby steps, then what would you say is more important, quality or quantity?
Quality.
Quality. I am so happy you said that.
Without doubt, it's the quality that matters, because if you have quality resources under your umbrella, and those are the resources that you go out and showcase to your funders, let's say, or to anyone, that's what they would appreciate, not the numbers. Because if you'll run after numbers, very soon people would realize that, well, it's not something that's worth going back.
Exactly.
So
like
the
that's
quality.
the motto we also kind of try to keep up, that we have to keep producing good work.
Exactly. Have your vision very clear that this is what we want to do. This is our target audience. These are the set of people. Not set of people means specific individuals, but kind of people you would want to work, and then grow your efforts in that direction. And that becomes, because I'm sure with good people in your network, many more new ideas will come in, and those ideas would really, really help in initiating new programs or new efforts under the umbrella, and things would grow. But the key is, yes, definitely hard work, honesty, and quality.
Right. Thank you so much. It's been a pleasure talking.
While we are on the topic of Scicomm internships and platforms which you can approach for getting your articles published, let me remind you that Cogito137 is one such platform. We accept written content in 3 different languages and video content in 8 different languages. There is no deadline, submissions can be made perennially and perpetually. Check out our website for further details on the editorial guidelines. Our next segment is the story of two young women who spotted the lack of female role models in scientific research and had a shared enthusiasm for the science and society interface. Ashima Dogra and Nandita Jairaj co-founded the Life of Science, an independent science and media project highlighting the stories of struggles and success of Indian women in science in 2015. We have with us Nandita Jairaj, telling us the story behind the lab hopping project with which this online project started. Nandita studied journalism at the Asian College of Journalism and has written for many publications like The Wire, The Print, First Post, Indian Express, Mongabay India and The Quartz, among others. She has also worked editorial posts in The Brainwave and The Hindu.
Hi, my name is Nandita. I am a co-founder of the feminist science media platform, thelifeofscience.com, sometimes called the Lab Hopping Project or CLOS in short. The idea of CLOS came to Ashima and me while we were working for Brainwave, children's science magazine. So we were already quite smitten with the idea of Scicomm and accessibility. And our initial idea for the Life of Science was to be a blog focusing on Indian science and using these faces behind Indian science to tell the stories of the immense amount of science that is being done in our backyards at the time. We wanted to focus on women to challenge the notion that interesting women in science are too few and far in between. One challenge that has remained from the time when we started to today is having a sustained funding source. Right now, we rely on grants during projects, and grants allow us to do what we do and pay our contributors decently. But it's on a project-to-project basis. So when we are in between projects, it is a struggle to find ways to keep ourselves paid. Crowdfunding and really friendly collaborators have helped us keep running when we are in between projects. Another challenge I like to say is that is to constantly remind ourselves that unlike many other science portals in the country, we do not consider it okay to be apolitical. And it's hard to be popular among the powerful when we have a responsibility to call them out when there are things wrong. For example, now I'm speaking to all of you as a supporter of IISER and Cogito, but at the same time, the clause is also pushing your authorities to address sexual harassment complaints against a faculty member there. The job can get uncomfortable, but then that is bound to happen when you're doing something when you're part of a movement that is trying to make some change. Overall, it's been a really fulfilling journey for me. And luckily for us, stories are everywhere, and storytellers are really increasing in population as well. On behalf of the Life of Science, we would like to wish all the best to Cogito137 in your journey towards becoming a multimedia science platform. Thank you.
Cogito is presently running a pan-IISER interview series of all women faculty. Arunita Banerjee from our team did an article for thelifeofscience.com highlighting the series where it began. Do check out our website for the interviews published in this series. And write to us if you would like to conduct interviews within the hashtag #IISER banner. Now it is a good trend that initiatives like TLOS, hashtag #IISER, and many other national and international forums have achieved to make women in science a point in discussion. The awareness about women's underrepresentation in STEM fields has definitely peaked, but Now, are we overdoing it? We asked Professor Shubha Tole, and she got back to us over email. She says that she doesn't conquer, and I quote her here, I think we're not having them early enough in a young woman's age to make much of a difference as we could. We should be aiming at girls when they're 12 years old. For our next segment, we have a featured talk by Professor Tole, where she gives her perspectives of being a young girl in India and how there exist systematic and societal challenges, eventually playing out as less women in STEM fields. Professor Shubha Tole is a neuroscientist in the Tata Institute of Fundamental Research, Mumbai. Her seminal contributions to understanding how the brain develops in early embryos have been recognized by prestigious awards such as the Shanti Swarup Bhatnagar Award 2014 and the Infosys Prize 2010. She is a fellow of all three academies of the science in India and teaches science communication, actively engages in public outreach via workshops in schools and colleges. She also regularly offers workshops on ethics in science at national and international fora. Professor Tole is known to write blogs, to provide guidance and mentorship to younger colleagues, and is a vocal advocate for women in science and of mental health awareness in academia.
I'd like to share my thoughts on what it is like to grow up as a girl in India and how this feeds into sort of the representation of women in STEM fields. Science is about exploring the unknown. We have to have the confidence to think independently, to trust our instincts, to use one's training, to take a calculated leap. And yet, there are elements of Indian tradition that work against encouraging these very qualities in young girls. Only in young girls, not in young boys, unfortunately. And this results in young girls compromising their dreams and aspirations very, very early. Okay, the broad message is that whatever you do in life, this can never come at the cost of your family. Now, young boys never get this message. I mean, the future is equally uncertain for everybody, but we grow up with this message. And this has consequences. When I was in junior college, St. Xavier's College, Mumbai, I was interviewed for the Best Student Award for junior college. And on the panel was a senior woman vice president, vice principal of the college, who asked me about my plans to go to medical school. At the time, I thought I wanted to be a doctor. She asked, did I anticipate any problems with being a woman in a difficult profession? And I replied matter-of-factly saying that I didn't anticipate any problems that I wouldn't be able to handle. And I was puzzled with the question. I was as puzzled with the question as she was puzzled with my answer. Because in India, girls are programmed to imbue their dreams with constraints from the very beginning. We're supposed to think of a future where our dreams will be constrained and we'll have to take into account many factors. Boys will also have to take into account many factors, but they don't let those factors constrain their dreams. And this is the kernel of what I want to communicate today. Now, there isn't anything wrong with making compromises in life when you come to them, but to not even dream and to constrain what you think you might want to do with all of these, anticipated issues before you even try. These are reflective of what every Indian girl experiences. In fact, maybe some of this even resonates with people in other countries. I'm going to talk about the insidious nature of this programming and how I magically seem to have escaped it. By the time a girl is 12 years old, she receives 2 diversion messages. You should do well in your career, of course, but you have to ensure your family's well-being and harmony. Traditional and cultural issues come into this as well. In India, we have a common practice of the so-called arranged marriage, which there's nothing wrong with. Many of my extended family members have simply met their spouses through a system where mutual introductions are made. Matrimonial columns are filled with descriptions of the kinds of people, people are looking for. And these reveal a very strong element of how the woman has to be, by definition, less than the man in every possible way. Okay, she has to be 2 inches shorter, can't be 2 inches taller. Okay, she has to be perhaps a degree less qualified. An MSc qualified girl is all right for a PhD boy, but never, never, never the reverse. She has to be younger. Okay, all of this set up so that eventually, when time comes for the couple to lead their life together, she is naturally at a junior position, at a less paid position, at perhaps a less stable position. And she's going to be the one to make the compromise if they have to decide which city to live in, or who will take which job, or who will give up a job to take care of the family. She's set up to always be lesser. She is set up to always, literally and figuratively, look up to her husband. All of this is basically ensures that there is minimal conflict in the family. When there is a conflict, she'll be the one to give in because she is set up that way. This is how our society starts off young women in this very, very important relationship, not as equal partners in a shared journey, but as a lesser individual who will always compromise in the interests of family harmony, because that's what women are supposed to do. No wonder our girls don't dream. Okay, all of this social programming is creates a situation where, from the age of 10, a girl knows that whatever she plans in life is going to be compromised. And I've had friends who've told me that let me not dream things that I may never be able to bring about. Let me create the absence of a dream so that I can fit into it whatever dream I am given or I am allowed to have. This is heartbreaking. This is heartbreaking to fit into it whatever dream I will be allowed to have. Deep in a 15-year-old girl's mind is this idea that her life choices are always going to be influenced by other factors, by in-laws, by husbands. Her ambitions are interwoven with concerns about whether she'll be free to pursue what she wants, whether these will be affected by her husband's job, and the lose-lose challenge of whether she'll be a working mother or a good mother. It's always defined as an either or, you can't be both. And then there is this huge social perception that somehow a woman who chooses to remain single is inadequate. Okay, not being married is an indication of inadequacy only for women. Okay, because you couldn't find a husband. A single man, nobody considers them inadequate. And, this is God only help those people who happen to be in the LGBTQ space. I cannot even begin to talk about how our culture utterly ignores, suppresses anything that's outside this so-called norm. So, to summarize this portion, it appears that Indian society doesn't really want independent-minded women. Okay, we raise our girls to know they have to compromise, to know they'll always be the lesser. And then these traits, okay, independence, the ability to make decisions, the ability to take risks, these are exactly what we need in STEM careers, okay? So we have this, completely opposite situation, and then we struggle with why there are few women in STEM fields. And then we create funding schemes, and then we create career re-entry programs, and we have women-centric mentorship sessions. All of these are absolutely critical. Okay? They are absolutely critical and necessary. But we've created the problem in the first place. Okay? We need to change the programming of our 10 to 12-year-olds if we really want to get to the root of the problem.
The importance of effective science communication and its role in our society has come to light through various ways since the beginning of the COVID-19 pandemic. The pandemic gave rise to a certain infodemic simultaneously. Social media started teeming with all kinds of scientific and medical advice, even from people who were probably not experts in the field. That is when Scicommers had to take up agenda, like spreading proper scientific awareness, do's and don'ts concerning precautions, and science education, to make people understand that ingestion of cow dung and cow urine would not ward off the coronavirus, for example. Of the many science media collaborations working in this direction in our country, ISRC, Indian scientists' response to COVID-19, did an exceptional job. Rajaraman, managing editor at Research Matters, has played a key role in spreading multilingual scientific awareness as a part of the science popularization team of the ISRC.
along with various leading scientists and science journalists of the country. Spurti was also a recipient of the Eureka Alert Fellowships for International Science Reporters 2019 and was awarded Merit Prize in the Asian Scientist Writing Prize 2017. Our next segment is a video message we received from Spurti Raman, congratulating our team in this new endeavor and emphasizing on why science communication through video platforms can be an extremely effective tool in a country like ours. Spurti Raman is a special friend of Team Cogito. Her recommendations and feedback have had great impact in the way Cogito137 is shaping up over the last years.
Hello and congratulations Team Cogito. It is very heartening to know that you have broadened your horizons to kind of start a YouTube channel that focuses on Scicomm. It is very heartening for two reasons. One, that science communication is now taking shape and moving beyond just writing, beyond text into various other medium, and that is a trend that we are seeing across the world, right? So in India, for example, science communication through video is the need for the hour because it's a very engaging platform. Video we have seen with platforms like TikTok, etc., where it has a very captive audience. It's a medium where people love to watch, and there is a strong message you can send on science to a lot of audience who may or may not be very good with words, may or may not be able to write and read. Nevertheless, video is a platform which can touch all of these. So great job, congratulations on this, and I hope to see a lot of success with this venture of yours. The other thing which I would like to talk about, considering why such an initiative is necessary today, is the pandemic that we are living through. Nothing like this was ever imagined, so to say, in a lot of our minds until this really struck us. It has struck us really hard for a variety of reasons. But throughout the pandemic, 8 months down, if you just go back in time, throughout the pandemic, one thing that has really stayed relevant to people in helping them understand how this is evolving, in understanding how this small virus is kind of taking a toll on everybody's lives, in not just making people ill or unfortunately causing deaths, but also our connections, social interactions, economies of big countries, including ours, has broken down into shambles. At this critical juncture, the only thing that can provide us answers with is science. Without science, it would have been very hard for us to understand what this whole disease is about, what the virus is, what can be probable medicines that we could think of, even development of vaccines. All of this depends on science, and it's very nice to know that you are putting a lot of effort into bringing science communication, taking the science that you're talking about to the lay public in yet another medium, that's video, and through your venture under Cogito's umbrella, which has seen a lot of success since the time it started. So congratulations again for that. And I would also like to point out that we live not only in a pandemic, like the great people have already said, and I'm just repeating this, is that we are living through an infodemic. There is a lot of information that is around us about this pandemic. Unfortunately, most of it is also wrong. A lot of it is also myths. So when we started, when India's first volunteering, a completely volunteering opportunity in trying to kind of spread information about this pandemic started, which is the Indian scientist response to COVID-19, and I'm a member of that as well. So when that started, there was a lot of questions that the team kind of had to address in terms of, the hows and whats of the pandemic. What should I do? How should I go shopping in these times. How is the virus going to affect me? How do I contract disease? How do I not contract disease? What do I do about it? How do I clean myself? All these questions were asked, and genuine questions. People were really concerned, and the scientists really did make an attempt to answer them, and that kind of communication to a lot of extent was successful in kind of guiding people. But what really stood out is also the amount of miscommunication or rather misinformation that existed in the society. For example, eating a particular plant extract, or eating or drinking salt water, gargling throat with salt water was all thought to kind of help people get rid of the virus. And in the process of this, following this kind of misinformation that's not really backed with science, people have gotten into trouble. People have gotten themselves into trouble, and people have gotten others into trouble. And in a society like ours, where the literacy rate is not as much as we would like it to be, plus where access to information is not as easy as one could have. So a lot of it is in a language that the majority does not speak. A lot of information that's out there is in the form of text, where a significant proportion cannot read or write. So in this context, having a medium that is language agnostic, literacy agnostic, is a great step, I would say. So in that direction, I would say this effort of yours in bridging the science and the society, not just pertaining to COVID-19, not just pertaining to one aspect of science, but in instilling the scientific temper, in helping people ask the questions, the right questions of the how, why, what, when. It really helps the society become scientifically literate, I would say, and ignite their curiosity, and eventually that would help people to evaluate a particular fact, whether that is true, false, plausible or not, and then make decisions, or rather an informed decision for themselves, whether to use a drug or not. What is the evidence that this is based on? These are questions that people have to be increasingly thinking in the current times. And if people are not doing that, I think we as a society will definitely fail, and scientists and the scientific community and the community of science communicators would have to face the truth that we have failed in our job. While that is not something we want to do, we should also really think about how do we get closer to the society in a way where society really accepts whatever is being said, also with questioning, even though it's coming from scientists, so that everything that they absorb is true and helps them sieve through information. In that context, I would say your venture of taking science to the society in a platform that is engaging, or through a platform that is engaging, in a manner that will also, I hope, is going to be engaging, is a peacetime effort. You cannot do all these efforts when tragedy is already stuck. So we have probably missed the bus of science communication to a big extent on the pandemic, but of course this may not be the last pandemic. We never know, considering whatever we've been doing to the nature around us. So if at all things go really bad eventually in the future, perhaps we as a country will be better prepared to face it in the the adversity that this whole endemics, pandemics, epidemics kind of bring on us. And it could be, science is something that will touch our lives every single day. It may not just be limiting to the pandemic that we are facing. And I hope this great effort of launching a YouTube channel to bring science closer to the society in a very interactive way will be rewarding for the team who is doing this, because that's very important, and the passion and the drive that all of you have shown so far with the rise of Cogito, I'm sure will continue with this endeavor. And I hope that through this you will be successful in engaging a lot of people, because eventually science communication is as successful as the amount of engagement you can create. And I hope you will take into consideration all of these and create a big dent with your new venture. With that, I wish you all the best and congratulate the entire team once again for this wonderful thought, wonderful effort, and wonderful execution. Thank you.
A country like India, with its huge multilingual population and varied demographics, has its own unique challenges when it comes to science communication. This brings us to the most awaited segment of the show, a featured discussion about science communication in India and its challenges between renowned science journalist Mr. Pallava Bagla and the present principal scientific advisor of the country, K. Vijaya Raghavan. We are featuring an excerpt of this discussion with permission from the initiator, Mr. Pallava Bagla. Professor K. Vijaya Raghavan is currently the Principal Scientific Advisor to the Government of India. His office aims to provide pragmatic and objective advice to the Prime Minister and the Cabinet on matters related to science, technology, and innovation with a focus on application of science and technology in critical infrastructure, economic and social sectors in partnership with government departments, institutions, and industry. He is also a distinguished professor at the National Center for Biological Sciences NCBS, Tata Institute of Fundamental Research, Bangalore, TIFR, and was the NCBS Director till 2013. He was Secretary, Department of Biotechnology, Government of India from January 2013 to February 2018. Mr. Pallava Bagla is a charismatic science communicator respected for his deep understanding of the science and technology system in India. New Frontiers in Science and Development is an online platform where he contributes actively in addition to Science and Getty Images. He was also the senior science editor from 2006 to 2019 for NDTV India. In his 2 decades of writing for the prestigious American weekly Science, his stories have highlighted India to the world. Mr. Bagla has numerous national and international awards to his name for his outstanding contributions to science journalism. The most notable among these are the David Perlman Award for Excellence in Science Journalism, which is considered as the Oscar for Science Journalism. He has also served as the president of the International Science Writers Association and was a member of the executive board of the World Federation of Science Journalists.
Welcome to this very special session coming to you from New Delhi, India. We are talking about challenges of communicating science in the world's largest democracy. 1.3 billion people, vibrant democracy, a country where governments change without any strife, 100% electronic voting in India, and I have with me Professor K. Vijayaraghavan. He is a chemical engineer by training, but now a biologist, and to us science communicators, he is a role model in science communication. India is a country which has 22 official languages and another 1600 languages. Professor Vijayaraghavan speaks English, Hindi, Tamil, and another South Indian language, Kannada, which he says partly, and another language which is the language of science where he speaks among scientists. More importantly, he speaks a language which even the Prime Minister of India can understand, and something which a layperson like me understands. My name is Pallava Bagla, and I'm a science photojournalist working out of India. Professor Vijayaraghavan, we are speaking to each other during times of COVID, and we are speaking virtually, so both of us don't have masks on each other. One of the big success stories from India is the masking of India and saving the world. And I distinctly remember, well before WHO or CDC or others came up with the idea of using masks, not just N95, but homemade masks. You played a critical role from zero masks to, let's look at only India, where there are almost everybody wearing masks. So maybe over 1 billion people wearing masks. How did you communicate this?
Well, I think, Pallav, we must point out that this was an enormous challenge for the following reason, and also the people who tilted the balance to propagate the use of masks. The challenge really was that, conventional wisdom, as it were, in the medical profession at the start of the pandemic conflated two issues. It conflated the importance of the medics having access to N95 masks and the danger of public, grabbing those masks away from them, with another agenda of the value of masks as protection. And that was the error which a lot of public communication made. We don't want to be, in a situation where healthcare workers don't have masks. So let's not propagate the value of masks. They need it, but you don't. And that logic somehow didn't seem valid. Because you're again conflating two different issues. You're talking about the value for the healthcare professionals on one side who need this, and how masks, compared to not having masks, is of value for the population in general. So the comparison, the baseline is very different. Now, this is something which was taken up by my office by a senior scientist there, Dr. Shailja Gupta, and
she played a key role.
And she played a critical role in articulating this. She did a lot of due diligence and pointed out how other countries were already showing importance for the use of masks, such as the Czech Republic and a few other places, even though it hadn't caught on in a big way. And she insisted on collecting whatever early stage documentation there was and making a very, very strong case. This, by the way, also came to the attention of the Prime Minister himself, who said that, look, this is something very important and must be done. So, the establishment, as it were, which goes slow and steady on many aspects, as it should, was pushed into adopting masks, face covers for the public on a much larger scale by the efforts of Dr. Shailja Gupta, principally from my office, working with the health ministry, working with the government, and the Prime Minister's nudge was very important.
How do you address the challenge of reaching the vast masses of India and in different languages?
One of the really fascinating aspects of science journalism and science communication today is the extent and quality of what is available in many languages across the world, in English, in Spanish, in German, French, and so on. In India, substantially what is available in our languages is by translation. And therefore, that too needs to change. So we need to do two things: substantial original writing in our languages, which in science and science communication, which then is translated into other languages, including English, and the other way around also. We have, by the way, a good example to follow over here. If you look at our literature, there's enormous literature of great depth and quality, both contemporary and older literature, which is available in our languages. And there is a tradition of translating that into English, for example. That tradition needs to be emulated in science bidirectionally. That's beginning to happen largely by a combination of quality translators and quality automation. And so I think we're going to see better two-way communication in science between languages, using different languages in both directions.
Let's turn our attention to one of India's flagship programs, which is the space program. India is a country which reached the moon in its maiden attempt, even Mars in its maiden attempt. Uh, how difficult or easy it is for India and people like you to convey the excitement around space, especially for a country which has so many poor people.
Well, there are two components in our India's space effort. And, in the early days of our space program, um, the leaders of those programs, Vikram Sarabhai and Satish Dhawan, put in a very important statement in our space program. And basically, what was it that distinguished our space program from the program of other countries? And that, they said, was the link between space and society. So space has done two things in India. It's actually transformed the lives of our people in agriculture, in education, and in health, for example, by the use of satellites to deliver in these sectors. And this is something which is really widely appreciated by everyone everywhere in India. In addition, space holds all over the world a thrall and excitement which astronomy, space holds for people everywhere. So that's something, so it's not a difficult challenge to have people accept the importance of space. It really excites people tremendously. But you have been a journalist covering the space sector a long time. What has been your reaction, in terms of which you get from people when you talk about space? Is it difficult to convey the excitement of space, or is it very easily appreciated?
No, it's a challenge, and I'm so happy that we're having a discussion and not a one-way question answer between me and you. No, I have covered space now for 2 decades. It's been a wonderful journey covering India's space program. Conveying complexities of space in a language which lay people understand is certainly a challenge. And when you talk to quality engineers and scientists, they talk a language which only they understand. To deconstruct that and make it accessible without dumping down, without diluting the science, and telling people the deep excitement about what happens in a clean room or when a rocket is made, has been an amazingly fulfilling journey. And trust me, it's not been easy. Earning the respect of the Indian Space Research Organization, to be able to work with them shoulder to shoulder in their clean rooms, has been a Herculean task.
Scientists collaborate with media outlets in order to increase the awareness and appreciation of science. The Science Gallery Network serves as an excellent example of a futuristic initiative which is globally funded that combines arts, sciences, and education in an extremely well-balanced mixture. It is based out of 8 nodes scattered all across the globe, out of which we are proud to state that Professor Janvi Falke, who is the founding director of the Bengaluru node, has agreed to be one of our speakers. Professor Falke is a visiting professor at the National Institute for Advanced Sciences, and she has also previously been a professor at King's College London, where she currently also supervises students. She has in the past won several accolades and is a prolific author. Among her many accolades include being a scholar in residence at Deutsches Museum in Munich, Germany, and being a fellow at the Wissenschaften College zu Berlin, also in Germany. She was the author of Atomic State, which describes big science in India in the 20th century, and she also co-edited the book Science of Giants, which describes China and India in the 20th 20th century. She is also on the editorial board of the British Journal of the History of Sciences and the History of Technology, and has directed and produced her own movie called The Cyclotron. Her accolades are far from over. We hope that everybody enjoys the talk, and thank you.
Hello and welcome to Cogito137, the thought capsule, which is being launched by IISER Kolkata. So congratulations to all of you for taking on this effort. This is something that needs a lot of attention in the country, and I'm glad that institutionally there's good support for this. I'm happy to extend my support as well, and just to contribute a little bit to what you are already doing, I would like to speak a little bit about the effort on creating a space for public engagement with science in Bangalore. To give you a background of Science Gallery Bengaluru, which is what I'm leading the establishment of, we are a part of an international network of galleries. We are 8 across the world. And one of the defining features of the gallery is that they are university linked. In fact, 7 of the 8 galleries are based on university campuses and deeply embedded into the research, pedagogy, and outreach ambitions of each of those universities. Bangalore, in that sense, is a slight outlier in that we are not on a single university campus, but we've been created as an independent institution for public engagement with science, with the strong and incredible support of the government of Karnataka. That said, we also have the support of 3 academic institutions, the leading one and our lead collaborator, the Indian Institute of Science, which we have the privilege of working with, and our collaborating partners, who we feel equally privileged to work with, is the National Center for Biological Sciences and Srishti Institute of Art, Technology and Design. Now, all of our sibling galleries across the world, what they offer is a public engagement program that brings scientists and artists together in order to create opportunities for young adults, especially between the ages of 15 and 25, to engage in interesting and creative ways with processes of making, creative processes, be it art, be it science, be it, a combination of the two. Now, what we've done in Bangalore, given the opportunity we had of creating an independent institution, is that we looked at the history of Science Gallery, which now has completed nearly 12 years, and looked at the next 10 years to see what would be the relevant format or form or institutional form, especially, that would address the same mandate of bringing creative processes to young adults, and also one that would be relevant to the Indian context, given how our universities and our higher education system is organized, but also how we might actually provide what in today's parlance is called thought leadership for thinking about cultural spaces for science at all. So our ambition is global. Our action, of course, is entirely embedded in the context we are working in, but we would like to, in fact, provide input for thinking on how institutions that are trying to create a public space for science might think about their own work. So to give you a sort of an overview on how Science Gallery Bengaluru functions, so we are, as I said already, an independent institution. We have an independent governing board. What is specific to us is that we have dedicated equal amount of space to 3 kinds of activities. Our building is under construction, and we have probably another 1.5 to 2 years before the building itself is opened. But we did start programming. We started programming about 11 months ago, and we have completed 3 exhibitions so far. The first one was called Elements, which marked 150 years of Mendeleev's periodic table. And we partnered with the Royal Society of Chemistry for that. Our second, which was a larger exhibition season, was called Submerge. It was about everything water, and we partnered with the Smithsonian Institution on that one and the Indian Academy of Science, among other institutions. And the third, which was entirely online, given that we found ourselves in the middle of the pandemic, called Phytopia, which was everything plants. And for that, we worked together with 2 eminent institutions. One is the John Innes Center, which is a Center for Excellence in Plant Health, based in Norwich, United Kingdom, as well as the Natural History Museum in the UK. And so what we're saying is that if you're sci-fi geeks and you want to meet every week, come hang out there. If you are Arduino freaks and you want to do some, circuitry and or whatnot, build some coding or do something else with it, come hang out there. Or if you just want to talk about what to do in the city to reduce the carbon footprint, come talk about it. If you want to generate a campaign around urban biodiversity, come, establish your group. So we are hoping that this will become a space to nurture and generate communities. And so that's what our community initiatives space is dedicated to.
Hi, this is Prajwal here. I'd like to use this time to formally thank everybody who was involved in this effort. But before that, a few words. Cogito is still a very young initiative. It is less than a year old, and we're still trying to expand our reach and our audience. This YouTube channel is the next step in that journey. With the launch of the channel, now we are not only serving content in video, but we are also serving it in 8 different languages. And we are trying to expand those set of languages by including more editors for different languages on board. I'd like to thank all the speakers who spent their valuable time and sent us the video bites. I'd like to thank the team for curating the entire event. I'd like to specially mention Shreyas Borkar, who created the amazing publicity posters. I'd like to thank the PR team for the great publicity that they have done. I'd like to thank our chief editor, Banerjee, for editing all the videos, contacting the speakers, getting interviews from speakers on video conferences. I'd like to thank Dr. Shubhajit Bandyopadhyay and Dr. Anindita Badra for suggesting a list of speakers, for helping us with Cogito, for generally helping with everything else. I'd like to thank the support provided by IISER Kolkata and the Office of International Relations and Outreach. And I'd like to thank all of you for watching this event. So as is the norm with YouTube channels, do like, share, subscribe, press the bell icon, and do send us the content if you have in video format. Thank you.